All right, so let's get right into it. We're talking about Beverly, this absolutely beautiful market town up in Yorkshire. Now, on the surface, you see all this stunning architecture, centuries of history just laid out before you. But if you peel back the layers, well, you find a town that's just swimming in secret stories, some really strange fables, and believe it or not, some seriously shocking human drama. So, to kick things off, let's unpack maybe the town's most famous mystery. It all starts inside St. Mary's Church with this tiny little stone carving that's been there for over 600 years. So the question is, what on earth could this medieval figure possibly have to do with one of the most famous characters in all of literature, the frantic, time-obsessed rabbit from Alice in Wonderland? Okay, just take a look for yourself. On the left, you've got the Pilgrim Rabbit from Beverly, carved way back around 1330. See how he's standing upright? He's got a bag. Looks like he's in a real hurry. And then on the right, Sir John Tenniel's classic illustration of the White Rabbit from 1865. I mean, come on, the resemblance is pretty uncanny, right? So the popular theory is that Lewis Carroll, who actually had family living nearby, popped into the church, saw this carving, and bam, that image of a rabbit on a mission just stuck in his head. Now that whole Wonderland connection is a fantastic story, for sure. But honestly, it's just the tip of the iceberg. The real story behind that rabbit and a whole bunch of Beverly's other oddities is somehow even weirder. So let's go ahead and open the first drawer in this town's amazing cabinet of curiosities. Right, so the Lewis Carroll link is a great story, but it's a modern legend. This carving has its own story, a much, much older one. It was actually meant to be a lesson for the people back in the Middle Ages. So if it wasn't about Wonderland, what was its real job? Believe it or not, this little carving is basically a visual sermon. It's based on a medieval fable by a guy named Odo of Cheriton, and the story is brilliant. Okay, so picture this. A village is late on their taxes, and they need to get the money to their lord, like yesterday. So someone has this genius idea. Hey, let's give the money bag to a rabbit. They're the fastest things around. So they do it. And, you guessed it, the rabbit grabs the money and just bolts into the forest, never to be seen again. See, for most people who couldn't read back then, this carving was a permanent, very public warning. Think twice before you trust a stranger with your cash. And the weirdness definitely doesn't stop with the rabbit. The town's name, Beverly, it literally comes from the word for beavers, which used to be everywhere in the rivers until, well, they were all hunted out. And Yorkshire Day, the whole tradition, started right here. For decades, the town had to use these specially designed, squashed-down buses just to fit under a medieval stone archway. And if you're ever there and fancy a pint, you can go to a pub called Nellie's that's been serving drinks pretty much unchanged since 1666. Incredible. Okay, so we've had the quirky fables and the fun facts, but Beverly's history has a much darker, more intense side. This place was the actual stage for some serious human drama. I'm talking about betrayal that literally changed the course of English history, and shocking, bloody violence that happened right in the middle of town. Now, to really get the weight of this next story, you have to understand one thing. The north of England was fiercely, and I mean fiercely, loyal to King Richard III. This is a real entry from the York City Council book, written just after he died. It calls his killing a great treason that brought great heaviness or profound sadness to the city. Remember that loyalty. It is absolutely key to what happens next. So this is the story of Henry Percy, the Earl of Northumberland. Now, get this. At the Battle of Bosworth, the battle that decided the entire war, he was in command of King Richard's backup troops. But he just held them back. He literally stood by and watched his king be defeated and killed. So fast forward 4 years. The new king sends Percy back to Yorkshire to collect a really unpopular tax. Well, the people there hadn't forgotten his betrayal of their king. An angry mob formed, they pulled Percy right off his horse and killed him. And here's the kicker. His own guards, his own men, just stood there and watched it happen. Exactly what he had done to his king years before. The irony is just staggering. Okay, let's jump forward a couple of centuries. Another bloody drama is about to unfold on Beverly's streets. The year is 1689. So at the time, Danish troops were billeted in Beverly, and 2 of their young officers, a Lieutenant Straker and a Coronet Bellow, get into this massive argument. It spills out into the street, swords are drawn, and they have a duel right there. Straker is mortally wounded. Now here's the problem. Under Danish military law, dueling was illegal, a capital offense. So a court-martial sentences the winner, Bellow, to death.
And on December 23rd, right before Christmas, they built a scaffold in the market square, and he was publicly beheaded by sword.
That grisly event went down in history as the very last execution by sword ever to happen in England. But the story has this one last really poignant twist. The two men, the killer and his victim, were buried right next to each other. And you can find their memorial plaque today inside St. Mary's Church, the exact same church where we started this whole journey with that little stone rabbit.
When you think about it, all of these wild stories, the fables, the betrayals, the tragedies, they all played out against this absolutely incredible architectural backdrop. The stone buildings of Beverly, they weren't just scenery. They were the silent witnesses to everything. So how magnificent are we really talking? Well, how about this? The town's absolute masterpiece, Beverly Minster, is so stunning, so architecturally perfect, that it was actually a contender to be the model for Westminster Abbey in London. Yeah, that Westminster Abbey. That should give you an idea of the kind of league we're playing in here. The Minster is just a giant. It's one of the biggest and, frankly, most beautiful Gothic churches in all of Europe. It was built on a spot that's been a place of worship since the 700s. The construction itself took over 200 years. And today, it just completely dominates the town's skyline. It's the first thing you see for miles around. It really is the heart of Beverly, physically and historically.
And then, of course, there's St. Mary's, the place we keep returning to. It's another absolute Gothic masterpiece, a top-tier listed building all on its own. But what makes it so special is that it's basically a library of stories carved right into the stone. It's got our pilgrim rabbit that kicked this whole thing off. It's got the memorial to the two Danish duelists. It's like all the different threads of Beverly's story just weave themselves together right inside those walls. So when you take a step back and you put all of these pieces together, the folklore, the high-stakes human drama, the absolutely breathtaking architecture, you start to get a real feel for what makes Beverly so special. It's one of those rare places where the past isn't really in the past at all. Really, it all comes down to this. In Beverly, folklore isn't just some old tale. It's physically carved into the walls. Tragedies aren't just forgotten. They're memorialized in stone for everyone to see. And history isn't just something you read about in a book. It's the living, breathing stage where everyday life still happens. And that really makes you think, doesn't it? Every town, every city, every neighborhood has its own hidden histories, its own pilgrim rabbits and tragic duels just waiting there, hiding in plain sight. So the real question is, what forgotten stories are hiding right where you live?